Limits. I don't like no limits. I like to run without limits. The limit does not exist. Hi there, Coach Sage Kande of SageRunning.com and Hoka One One Athlete here with another training talk. Today we're going to talk about the 10,000 hour rule and how I think it actually doesn't really apply to distance running. The 10,000 hour rule was made popular by Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers. He mentions it in the book, and it's kind of the idea that to develop mastery in a sport or a thing like art or music or something like that, you have to devote 10,000 hours of practice to this activity. So a good example would be like playing a skill sport, we'll say, shooting baskets, right? Playing basketball or playing soccer, developing as a musician, right? Playing the piano or some sort of musical instrument, the guitar. And if you devote 10,000 hours, it's quite a bit of time, that's when you start to really become basically your expert, or you start reaching your potential, realizing your best self, I guess, in that. And practice makes perfect, right? It makes sense in a way, and it mainly applies though to skill sports, I'm saying. And distance running is more not like basketball or soccer or golf or tennis or something like that. So we'll get into that in this talk. That's what this is about. So if we do the maths on the 10,000 hour time frame, you're looking at about practicing 20 hours per week, right? Almost 3 hours a day, every day, for 50 weeks out of the year, almost every week of the year, right? So basically 20 hours a week, 50 weeks out of the year, for a decade straight. 10 years straight of practicing that much. Now that's a lot. That's a lot. If you're a pro musician though, practicing 3 hours a day most days isn't totally unreasonable. If you want to be a full-time musician or a full-time artist, or you want to play soccer, as a professional or in college, it's a lot of practicing. Shooting baskets for hours a day, you're going to get a lot better at that. It's a very skill-oriented sport. Practicing your golf swing or your tennis swing, practicing fingerstyle guitar, something like that. Whereas running, most of us, first of all, maybe don't have time to run for 2 or 3 hours every single day. But a lot of us would also get injured, myself included probably, if I was out running 3 hours a day. Now people do that, but there's kind of an effect where it gets very tiring and it's a lot of stress on your body. So maybe if you add in the time spent training where you're doing all the little things like stretching and weight training, drills, maybe then we're looking at practicing 2 or 3 hours a day. I probably did that in college a lot, and nowadays doing long runs on the trail, you're putting that time in on your feet. It takes a lot longer. And there's an interesting book, Run with the Best. I'll pull up some graphics of it here. And there's a chart in this book that says minimum mileage needed to basically reach your potential in these different distance running events. And the general rule of thumb is you need less lifetime miles in an event like the 800 meters or the 1500 meters, half mile, or even the 5K. You don't need as many lifetime miles as you do for like the marathon, where it says, okay, you need about 30,000 lifetime miles, 50,000 kilometers of lifetime miles under your belt before you really could start tapping into your actual potential as a distance runner. And this makes sense. The longer events like the marathon and ultra require more lifetime miles, and generally, if you've been able to average higher mileage over the last several years or the last decade, it helps with that strength and that efficiency and endurance. So distance running, and this is why I don't think the 10,000 hour rule applies so much to a sport like distance running, is because it's a lot of it's very physical. It's very mental too, but a lot of it's very physical. It's the sheer demands of your aerobic system, how efficient your heart and lungs are, how efficient blood flow is to the muscles, how strong and specific your muscles are to your running form, and how well you utilize fat as a fuel, and how what your oxygen delivery is to those muscles. And then from the mental side, of course, mental toughness and perseverance go a really long way in distance running, but that's just about being tough. It's not so much a skill sport, so to speak, where you have to be very coordinated, passing a soccer ball, shooting a basketball, right? So, or even playing a musical instrument requires dexterity and fine motor movements. Distance running, trail running, there's some technical aspect maybe to learning how to go down a technical mountain trail, but it's still not quite as very specialized practice skill as those very precise movements in other sports or even playing a musical instrument, right? And then there's a trade-off too with nature versus nurture. Your genetics, your natural talents, or your personal strengths. Some of you, it might be your fortitude and your discipline or your ability to push through the pain, to look on the positive side of things, right? That's a big strength in distance running. Or it could be knowing your body well, having good natural running form, just having some natural good speed. That comes down to science and the fast twitch or slow twitch muscle fibers, but also being smart with your training, not getting injured, not pushing too hard. So what I'm saying basically in the nutshell is that you don't need to devote 10,000 hours to distance running to reach your full potential. You could probably do it on less, and it probably is smarter because you won't be trying to run 3 hours a day every day for a whole decade, and you'd probably get injured if you did that. I know I would. So unlike a skill sport or even something like cycling, where pro cyclers usually demand 3 to 5 hours of training a day on their bike because they got to get in that aerobic adaptations, but no pounding. Running is a tough sport. It's a demanding sport, but you can make a lot of gains on less time and less mileage. And I know if you probably work full time, you got a family, you got all these obligations, you probably don't have time to train 3 hours a day. That's a real luxury for like the pro sponsored athletes, right? Generally, or the collegiate athletes. So, you don't need to hit this certain lifetime mileage, but running progressively higher mileage and building the aerobic base generally is going to help. You don't have to have perfect running form, but having good enough running form so that you don't get injured, and doing some things like drills and weight training and stretching does make a difference because it's keeping you healthy so you could be consistent in your training. In these other sports, if you want to go pro in practicing your golf swing or something like that, playing soccer, I was too uncoordinated to make it in soccer. I started playing soccer when I was 5, but I didn't have the ball handling skills, and I didn't practice them very much because I was just better running without the ball. So the whole idea, it's a great rule, 10,000 hour rule. It makes sense. Practice makes perfect, but you have to realize that there's a lot of other factors at play, and it doesn't really apply, in my opinion, to a sport like distance running, which I've devoted most of my life to. And I've probably put in over 60,000 lifetime miles and done the 10,000 hours, but I've been running for over 22 years year round and a lot of really high mileage weeks. But if you do it by the paces, if you're running 10-minute per mile pace on average, or 6 minutes per kilometer about on average, 10,000 hours would be 60,000 miles, 96,000 kilometers of running. That's a big amount of volume in lifetime, and you don't necessarily need to hit that. You could do a lot more on less, and that's about optimizing your training. So check out my other training talks. I have a whole playlist. We got 5K, 10K training, we got marathon training, we got ultra mountain trail running training, as well as adventure videos. Check out the aerobic base building plan. We got free downloads at sagerunning.com. Again, thank you so much to the Patreon supporters for really making this channel possible. Coach Sandy and I sell our training plans also at sagerunning.com. Check out all the links in below, as well as sponsor plugs. Thank you to title sponsor Hoka One One, keeping the dream alive. Hope you're doing well, and stay tuned for more VO2 Max Productions.